3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. This is
UniversalExports.co.
Welcome, the listener, to the July podcast of UniversalExports.co. The audio mix this time takes on a number of different sound journeys to interesting locations. You may have heard of some of them, but their backstories may surprise you. We'll also stop for a quick coffee break of sorts on the trip through, so hang on to your seats. Here we go. Whoops, excuse me. A bit further down for that one. It was supposed to be this. Much better. That's the lapping waters of Rye Beach, just near the boat launching ramp and the Rye Pier. Rye was proclaimed as a town on the 26th of February in 1861. Most of the suburban lots were bought by W.A. Blair, a Melbourne lime merchant. Lime could be quarried throughout the area west of Bonio Road. Many golf courses and the Peninsula Hot Springs are on the sites of lime burners' properties between Brown and Limestone Roads. An excellent reproduction of a lime kiln can be seen on the foreshore just east of Whitecliffe. Rye Pier is a popular recreational scuba diving site inside Port Phillip. The pier is full of life and different every dive you do. Many juvenile marine life forms are found here, as well as plenty of stingrays, spider crabs, squids and octopus. Every year, around late May through to mid-June, one of the world's most interesting congregations of marine life happens, as giant spider crabs come together in the shallow waters off the piers and the beaches of Port Phillip, including the Rye Pier. The huge casts of giant spider crabs are often sighted as they gather en masse on the sandy bottom of Port Phillip. And guess what that was? Yes, it's a seal. And the reason that's there, because they often come into the Rye Pier from the seal colony on the nearby channel marker. I've got more about that for you in a minute. Opening in 2004, Rye Skate Park was the first ever cradle skate bowl built in the Southern Hemisphere and is still popular with the skateboarders down here. During the period up to World War II, there was very little development in Rye, but as the roads were built, day trippers and holiday makers came further south to enjoy the natural beauty of the area. Families with children enjoyed the freedom of swimming in the bay and playing on the sandy beaches, collecting shells and building, guess what, sandcastles. The tourism, which had such humble beginnings as far back as 1880, had become the mainstay of Rye by the 60s. That's 1960s. The replica of John Pascoe Faulkner's schooner Enterprise, a ship that sailed from Van Diemen's Land, Tasmania, in 1835 with the first permanent white settlers that started what was to become the city of Melbourne, offers day trips from the pier occasionally in the summer months. I've even climbed the rigging of the Enterprise, and you could too, and it's well worth the effort. The Whittingslow Carnival was a great place for families on summer evenings, and the carnival excitement a special holiday treat. The Rye Foreshore Camping Reserve has a prime position along the 2 kilometres of white sandy beaches and turquoise waters with over 170 sites. Foreshore camping is available from the last weekend of October, just in time for the Melbourne Cup weekend, to April. I understand the world-renowned chanteuse, Tina Arena, with her family, used to holiday on the Rye Rosebud foreshore, and the song, Sorrento Moon, was inspired by events in the nearby area. Now, more about that South Channel pile light that I mentioned. One of those things a lot of you have seen but may not be aware of its story. After 125 years, the South Channel pile light has been restored and relocated to a safer location to assure its preservation as a piece of maritime history. This remnant of the 19th century channel markers that led Melbourne-bound ships through the South Channel was established in 1874. It was the front light with the eastern light at Macrae, the rear light. It is a single-storey octagonal structure about 9 metres across and standing on timber piles in the water. The structure is the only one of its kind still intact in Australia. The structure included a living room with a fireplace, a chimney, a bedroom with 4 bunks and an inspector's office, which also used to be served as a storeroom. All this in the space of only 6 metres in diameter. A hole in the floor served as the toilet. Rainwater was collected from the roof and stored in tanks. Keepers would wait for a passenger ferry to pass each morning to receive the newspaper, which was tossed to them from the deck. The light powered by a kerosene lantern that had to be kept alight by the keepers until the introduction of bottled acetylene gas in 1925. The light operated for 111 years until 1985, when it was turned off for a trial period, but it was never turned back on. The structure quickly deteriorated due to lack of maintenance and vandalism. The wood was rotting and the steel was rusting and the piles were becoming unsound. Nothing worse than unsound piles. The light was overrun with birds nesting inside and out, and you could smell the guano a mile away. In 1998, Parks Victoria, who was then responsible for the historic pile light, lifted the light structure off its original piles. It was transported to Melbourne, where it was faithfully restored, then returned to a new location on new piles adjacent to the Rye Channel and 3 kilometres away from its original location. There is no operating light in the restored structure, although it is still used as a day mark by small boats. Between 1905 and 1913, the lighthouse keeper painted murals of sailing ships on the interior walls of the house. These were removed in 1979 and are now on display in the Pollywoodside Melbourne Maritime Museum. Recommend you go there and look at that too. Formed by the confluence of the east and west branches of the river, the Ovens River, to which you are now listening, rises in the Victorian Alps at the settlement of Harrietville, sourced by runoff from high slopes located with the Alpine National Park and the Mount Buffalo National Park. The river flows generally north by west and is joined by 18 tributaries, including Morses Creek at Bright, the Buckland River at Pawnpukka, the Buffalo River, and then the King River at Wangaratta. The river descends 405 metres over its 191-kilometre course. The Great Alpine Road follows much of this course of the river in its upper reaches. The Star River Bridge, yes, that's what you can hear now, crosses the Ovens River right at the centre of Bright. Bright is a town in northeastern Victoria, 319 metres above sea level at the southeastern end of the Ovens Valley. It's a base for exploring the peaks of Mount Buffalo National Park and Alpine National Parks, as well as Mount Hotham, a popular ski resort. The region is also known for wineries, and I can attest to that, and autumn foliage, and I can attest to that. It's really good. Bright is a starting point for the Murray to Mountains Rail Trail, a hiking and cycling path. Or is that a hiking and cycling path? Whichever way. Bright Museum in the town's former train station documents rail and gold rush history. Hamilton Hume and William Hovell explored the area in 1824, naming the Ovens River. The town was first known as Morses Creek, after F.H. Morse, not Endeavour Morse. But in 1861 it was renamed in honour of the British orator and politician John Bright. The post office opened on the 25th of January 1860 as Morses Creek and was renamed Bright in 1866. Gonna have a cough? Excuse me. Here are a few things that are worth checking Bright out about. You could ride the Mystic Mountain Bike Park, cool off in the Ovens River on a hot day, and I can attest to that too. Imbibe an award-winning boutique ale at Bright Brewery, or my preference, which was the dry cider. You could cycle the easy-sealed rail trail to charming Pawnpukka and Wandillagong. And that's not a bad little ride, actually. If I can do it, anyone can do it. You could experience one of Australia's biggest showcases of hot rods, custom and vintage vehicles at Bright's iconic Rod Run. It's held each November. Hope we can do it this year. Or you could admire the mountain panorama from Apex Lookout. What a view. The other things you could do, discover Bright on foot via the 4-kilometre, 2.5-hour return canyon walk. And or be dazzled by beautiful open gardens at the annual spring and autumn festivals. This one I like, get airborne. Take a thrilling paragliding flight 500 metres above Bright. To find out more, go to alpineparagliding.com. Or if you want to take it a little bit easier, soak up the landscape touring in style with Bright limousines. For easy and inexpensive home coffee roasting, I use a popcorn maker, which I bought online for $29. The fan in this is strong enough to handle 2 cups of green beans without difficulty. Using it outside means the chaff coming off it is not a problem. I'd be in heaps of problems if I did it inside. It also helps with cooling the roasted beans quickly. Waiting the full 11 hours allows for over 1,000 chemical reactions to settle and for that beautiful coffee aroma to develop. Once roasted, the coffee is at its peak after 11 hours and lasts up to 7 days when it begins to die rapidly. So don't make too much at a time. Pace correctly, you should get the freshest and best in a continuous cycle. Oh, I'm going to enjoy this one. The Sydney Myer Music Bowl is an outdoor band shell performance venue in Melbourne, Victoria. It is located in the lawns of the Gardens of King's Domain on Linlithgow Avenue, close to the Arts Centre and the South Bank Entertainment Precinct. It was opened by the Prime Minister of Australia, it was opened by the Prime Minister of Australia, Robert Menzies, on 12th of February 1959. With an audience of 30,000 people. It is listed on the Victorian Heritage Register, and the largest crowd ever for a concert event in Australia was in 1967 when the Seekers Homecoming concert at the Sydney Myer Music Bowl was on, with an estimated 200,000 people attending. It's a lot of people. The 2007 Guinness Book of World Records lists it as the greatest attendance of a concert in the Southern Hemisphere in history. Wow. In 1980, administration of the bowl was handed over to the Victorian Arts Centre from the Sydney Myer Fund by Ken Myer, Sydney Myer's son. In 1984, a temporary ice skating rink was created on the bowl stage for use during winter months. The venue was closed for a major renovation in 2000 to bring the facilities up to an appropriate standard and was reopened by the Premier of Victoria then, Steve Bracks, at a carols by candlelight on Christmas Eve 2002. For those inclined to engineering, the bowl's canopy consists of a thin membrane made out of 1/2 inch weatherproofed plywood, sheeted on both sides with aluminium attached to a cobweb frame of steel cables, and is supported by 70-foot masts pivoted to the earth. The total area of the canopy is 4,055 square metres, and the main cable at the edge of the canopy comprises of 7 ropes, each about 9 centimetres in diameter and 173 metres long, anchored deep into the ground to concrete blocks. The longitudinal cables hold up the roof and the transfer cables hold it down. This is the sound of a drone flying up the cables to the masts. And I'm not telling you who did that. The Sydney Myer Music Bowl is registered on the Victorian Heritage List for its cultural importance to Victoria, its architectural importance as the largest purpose-built permanent outdoor performance venue in Australia, and its engineering experimentation in new forms of construction involving use of membranes and a tensile structural system. I have tap danced and sung in the Myer Music Bowl in a solo event, which had a total audience size of 0. Now that's a record that'll be hard to beat. Oh! That's our lot for today. Thank you for sharing your time with us. Listen out for us again soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of
UniversalExports.co.
It's very vague, isn't it? Universal Exports.
I know.
Could be
What do they
anything.
export? I know.